Hello, Walker. Well, the trading week is winding down, and investors have been quite busy in the markets. Well, let's get to the top stories that set your agenda now. We see oil prices have slipped in early trade today, reversing most of the previous session gains, weighed down by worries of higher global production amid slow demand growth, with a firmer dollar exacerbating the declines there. And there you have it, another drop there, 0.5% for Brent, $71.93 a barrel. The U.S. grade, that's holding on, but might lose that $68 level, might go sub 68 at some point, 1 cent higher, 0.6% down. So we're still seeing pressure there. We see the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries cut its global oil demand growth forecast to 1.82 million barrels per day in 2024, down from 1.93 million barrels per day forecast. That was last month on weak demand in China, India, and other regions, sending oil prices to their lowest in nearly 2 weeks. Meanwhile, the U.S. Energy Information Administration they've raised its expectation of U.S. oil outputs to an average of 13.23 million barrels per day this year, or about 300,000 barrels per day higher than last year's record of 12.93 million barrels per day. So eyes still on this market, definitely good for bad for government revenue, but should be good for petroleum product prices. All right, to other stories now. Efforts to ramp up production at the Dangote refinery with a capacity of about 650,000 barrels per day have received a significant boost following the successful execution of a gas sale and purchase agreement between the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, Gas Marketing Limited, and the refinery. The agreements signed by the Managing Director, NGML, and Mr. Aliko Dangote, that's the President and CEO of Dangote Group, ensures the supply of natural gas for both power generation and feedstock at the refinery located at Ibejuleki, Lagos. This milestone aligns with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's vision of leveraging Nigeria's vast gas resources to drive industrial growth and economic prosperity. The deal, which involves no capital expenditure, is hailed as unprecedented in the history of NGML and local gas distribution company in the country. Under the terms of the agreement, NGML will provide 100 million standard cubic feet per day of natural gas to the refinery over an initial 10-year period, with a potential for renewal and expansion. All right, let's get a check on the FX market. See, the Nigerian foreign exchange market opened the trading day yesterday on a steady note, but we did see an appreciation this time, 1,645 naira. That was a close for the NFM window, up 2.63%. So that losing streak that's been snapped at this point at the official window. NAFEX 1,679. On the flip side, that's down about 0.27%. There was intervention with the CBN stepping in, selling dollars, which led to the appreciation of about 44 naira, bringing that exchange rate to 1,645 naira. So still volatility right there. So other stories now, we see the Nigeria signed a $1.2 billion agreement with China National Chemical Engineering Corporation, that's CNSEC, to restore operations at a major gas processing plant integral to the country's aluminium production capacity. That was announced by the Minister of Petroleum Resources, that's for gas, Perikwe. The deal is a strategic step towards revitalizing the Aluminium Smelter Company of Nigeria in Akwa Ibom, which has been inactive due to prolonged legal and financial challenges. Partnering with BFI Group, Alston's co-investor, CNSEC, is set to rehabilitate the 135 million standard cubic feet per day gas processing facility at Alston. The effort aims to enable annual aluminium production of 300,000 tons, with plans to scale up to 1 million tons, potentially establishing Nigeria as a leading aluminium producer in Africa and beyond. In addition to boosting aluminium output, the project will generate up to 540 megawatts of electricity, addressing critical power needs in the region and contributing to Nigeria's industrial and energy landscape. Alston's managing director, Dmitry Zavalov, previously noted that reactivating of the smelter requires about $500 million investment to restore equipment and implement power solutions. During the visit to by President Bola Tinubu and the Askins chairman. They emphasized the investment importance for Nigeria's economic growth. And right, it's all about budgets now. The Oyo State Governor, Seyi Makinde, has presented a 678 billion naira budget proposal for 2025. The State Assembly calling it the budget of economic stability. The budget aims to build on past efforts and tackle inflation, focusing on developing across all 33 local government areas. The budget includes a new minimum wage of 80,000 naira, ensuring a smooth transition to the updated salary structure. Capital expenditure takes 50% of the budget, while the remaining 49% is for recurrent expenses. Take a listen.
The goal of this budget is to consolidate the economic gains we engineered through the 2024 budget of economic recovery and translate them into more tangible benefits for our people. It has always been the goal of this administration to ensure that every kobo approved by this House is used to drive sustainable development in Oyo State. So the Oyo State 2025 appropriation bill is not going to be any different. We are even more determined to ensure that our people get more benefits from the implementation of this budget.
All right, to some company news now. CIG Motors, Netcom Oaks Limited and Fidelity Bank have signed a new partnership to promote electric mobility through CIG Motors' supply of 2,000 Wuling electric vehicle units into the Nigerian transport system. It's coming after CIG Motors' initial partnership with the Lagos State government on a supply of 5,000 electric vehicles for lag ride. At the MOU signing ceremony in Lagos, the chairman of CIG Motors Group, Chief Diana Shen, says this new partnership is poised to save citizens from the troubles of maintenance, mechanical repairs, emission of carbon, long fuel queues, and most importantly, help to ease the lives of Nigerians through smart living and green initiatives. Take a listen.
It's another special day for CIG Motors and its partners. Here to witness the official beginning of a new partnership between CIG Motors, Netcom Oaks Limited and Fidelity Bank are management and senior members of staff of the organizations, supported by two popular faces in Nigeria's entertainment industry. The strategic alliance focuses on promoting Wuling electric vehicles as a new generation automobile.
The EV, it is a tool. It is an energy storage. We don't think it is just a motor. The house in your oil real estate, they are not just using this vehicle as the mobility. They also use this vehicle as the energy storage.
Our shared vision, a vision of transforming and making our Nigeria better, a vision to protect our environment, a vision to save Nigeria from the influence and the impact of carbon in our environment.
Fidelity is associated with innovation, and of course, it's a tripartite thing in the sense that we are going to provide the funding that will support this.
CIG Motors is known for luxury.
Pen on paper seals the deal to unlock the partnership for CIG Motors to supply an initial order of 2,000 Wuling electric vehicle units, including the setting up of charging stations across all of Netcom Oaks Limited estates.
The good part is these vehicles actually come with a mobile charger. But apart from that, we are doing collaborations with hotels, banks, power distribution companies, substations. That way you can have electric vehicle charging points in those areas. When vehicles are charged, it lasts 303 kilometers to 333 kilometers, depending on the vehicle.
We are giving 3 years electrical warranty on the EVs in Nigeria, and we are training thousands of people, of young Nigerians, young graduates, to learn how to navigate the EVs so that new jobs will be created.
And the most beautiful part of it is that this car has everything you can dream of in a car.
He has luxury, he's smart, he's efficient, and he's super durable.
I've driven EV cars before, mostly in America, but here I drove my first EV car here today. It's really nice, quiet, cool, just like you don't know when the car is on, you don't hear it.
For CIG Motors and Netcomux, the e-mobility path in Nigeria's automobile industry can only get better with willing electric vehicles, not just serving a smart powerhouse with clean energy storage, but also boosting economic growth and providing a sustainable future for everyone.
And now to our first conversation. We see Nigeria's public debt that reached 134 trillion naira. That's about $91 billion by the end of the second quarter of 2024, marking a significant rise of about 10.35% from 121 trillion. That's $91 billion reported in the first quarter. So they have a total debt stock, 134 trillion. Foreign, that's about 63 trillion. And for domestic, 66 trillion. So we see domestic debt outperforming our foreign debt. So let's analyze all of this now. Join us to unpack this debt stock is Mr. Dr. Oyo State. He's the CEO of Think Business Africa and the convener of Africa Business Convention. It's great to have you on the show. Good morning.
Good morning, Lottie. Thank you so very much for inviting me here.
Great to have you. So 134 trillion naira, that's the total debt stock, about $91 billion. Debt to GDP ratio, something around 50%. Should we be worried?
We should be worried. We should be worried for two reasons. One is that we have seen the most dramatic increases in debt in the last decade. And as the figure that you showed there, we have not only seen the dramatic increases in the last decade, we have also seen that the naira equivalent to pay those debts has also gone up dramatically following naira's depreciation, especially in the last 1 year and a half. So yes, we should be worried. And more so, we have debt that is growing well beyond the rate of economic growth in the economy. So there is a reason why we should be worried. And of course, in terms of the revenue to pay back, that is not also growing as far as the debt. So if you look at all the metrics surrounding the growth in Nigeria's debt, there is cause to worry, yes.
And, looking at all the debt we've, racked up, so far, you connect that with development, it seems it's not matching, at all. So is it that, Nigeria's debt is not profiting or developing, the economy, but is it that it's just, just a few people are enjoying Nigeria's debt, so far? Because you look around and you can't see where this money is going into.
Okay, so in the period that we have had significant increases in Nigeria's debt, if you ask any government official, even in the last administration and this current one, if you ask them why is debt growing, they will tell you that they are actually borrowing money in order to support economic growth in the country or in the economy. However, if you look at the growth that we have seen, if you look at June 2023, for instance, we're talking about 71 trillion. That's in June 2024. In June 2024, 71 trillion. In March, we saw 65 trillion, and then 59 trillion in June 20. For 8 trillion in 2015. So you have moved from 8 trillion to the region that we now see, which is around 113 trillion. So if you ask them what has happened to Nigerian debt, they will say they embarked on those debt stream in order to support economic growth. But why debt has grown in Naira terms by over 1,000% in the last 10 years. Growth has only averaged 2% on average in the same period. So there is no correlation between the debt growth and economic growth, which is what we are supposed to see. So when you look at everything, whether it's revenue, debt to GDP, the capacity to repay the debt, the impact on macroeconomic instability, the impact on inflation, of course, what has also driven the depreciation of the Naira. So there is nothing that supports there's nothing positive in the growth and the debt that we are seeing in the last decade, yes.
So is it safe to say we just stop borrowing at this point?
Well, we can't stop borrowing. However, we can put a limit to the growth in debt. In every analysis and show I have appeared on in relation to debt, I have said that, look, the rule for debt at this stage in Nigeria's economic trajectory now, the rule should be our debt should not grow beyond the real rate of economic growth. So now we are doing about 3%. So I do not expect that Nigeria's debt should grow beyond that level at this junction. Anything beyond that 2-3% is just contributing to the inflation and of course to the depreciation of the Naira that we have seen. And there's something very, very ironic in Nigerian policy environment, and I believe many people would have understood this. Nigerian fiscal and monetary policy environment is very, very unique. So you have a situation in which all the problems, all the contributions to current macroeconomic stability comes from fiscal, because it is fiscal that goes to borrow, it is fiscal that embarks on deficit. Currently, almost 10% of 10% of GDP. Meanwhile, the rule says it should be about 3 to 3.5% of GDP. But we are currently doing almost 10% in terms of deficit expenditure. Those are the contributions to macroeconomic stability. However, when it now comes to where do we get the solution to Nigeria's macroeconomic stability, then we turn to monetary policy measures. It doesn't work that way. That's not the way economics work. The source of the problem is fiscal. The source of the solution should also be fiscal. We have a challenge if we continue to have successive government that cannot rein in their expenditure. They can't rein in their expenditure. If you cannot rein in your expenditure and you continue to borrow with the expectation that there will be growth in the future, it does not work that way. It is the same growth in debt that is leading to macroeconomic instability, and it is that macroeconomic instability that is preventing us from growing the Nigerian economy. So that is the trajectory that we see, that's the process that we see, and that is the transmission mechanism in Nigeria. So for us to grow, for us to stabilize, we need to stabilize the rate of growth of debt, especially, the nature of our own debt, which obviously directly leads to increases in money supply. That is what we have to deal with. Anything short of 3% growth in debt over the next 3, 4, 5 years, so that we can consolidate, we can stabilize and consolidate economic growth and improve the relative income and wealth of Nigerians compared to other economies over the next 3, 4, 5 years. It's not, if we don't do that, then we just continue to go down the drain.
All right, and looking at the debt stock, you see foreign and you see domestic debt. Domestic debt seems to have outperformed foreign debt, with this current debt stock that we see. And the central bank, trying to rein in inflation, they've had to carry out some operations in the open market. So is this a bright spot? Looking at this debt stock, seeing that it's more domestic.
If I heard you very well, you're asking if the preference for domestic debt is something that should be welcome. Is that correct?
Yeah, so is it a bright spot seeing that domestic debt is higher than foreign debt?
Well, we know, domestic debt is higher than foreign debt because it's very, very easy to actually acquire domestic debt. But domestic debt is not free debt. the opportunity cost of domestic debt are very, very huge. Don't forget that the capital market that the federal government and the state government go for domestic debt is also supposed to be the capital market that businesses also go for debt. That's number one opportunity cost that is rising there. Then the second point is that the source of the domestic debt actually directly increases the money supply in the economy. So if you look at the increases in the rate of inflation that we have seen, increases in, and of course the naira weakness that we have seen, that is the source. The source is that debt. That is what is driving the rate of inflation. Of course, there are structural issues, don't get me wrong. But the debt that we have seen at the rate in which it is being acquired, that is what is leading to rises in inflation and the weakening of the naira. So who is losing? Those that are losing are the businesses and me and you in the Nigerian economy. Because how are we losing? Our naira 10 years ago is not the same as it is today. Because one, you have increases in debt, but growth has not caught up with increases in debt. So we are losing. Our relative wealth just 2 years ago is not what it is today. The size of the economy was about $500 billion almost about a decade today. Now it is half of that. So it is the growth in debt that is translating to the increases in the inflation and of course the depreciation of the naira that is eroding the relative wealth of Nigerians. So there is no free debt, whether it's domestic or whether it is foreign. We must deal with debt as something that is very, very critical at this point of Nigeria's history, and that is any growth in debt that is more than 2-3% over the next 4, 5, 10 years is what is causing rises in inflation and, of course, weakening of the naira. And that is not something we can continue to endure.
All right, definitely I can relate to, what you've spoken about there. That's purchasing power, because I'm not feeling that power, looking at how the naira has weakened, so far when it comes to my purchasing power. But let's take it on to Africa now. We see the likes of Kenya, as at June, about $70 billion. That's the total debt stock. Ghana, I was sitting about $40 billion as of February. And Egypt, $25 billion as at March 2024. So, these countries, we've seen some of them act to, try and restructure, some of their debts at this point. We've heard all the screaming headlines coming out of Ghana. So it's looking like Africa is having a debt problem, right now.
Yes. I mean, almost every African economy has debt problems. So, and let me just say this in case there is nothing wrong in debt per se. There are two things we have to watch for when it comes to debt: the source of the debt, and of course the growth of the debt. So when you look in the Nigerian situation, if you look at the sources of our debt at the moment, those sources are not sustainable because of the opportunity cost. If you look at the growth, those growth is not supporting economic growth as it was intended to be. So that is also not sustainable. But if you now look at the economies that you have just mentioned, the Ghana, I think you got, if I look at your data again, I think there was Ghana, there was Kenya, and I think there was probably Egypt. If you look at those economies, you will see that in US dollars, it looks massive. However, if you look at Nigerian situation, you will notice that in US dollars, in June 2015, it was 63 billion US dollars. But in today's US dollars, it is $91 billion. So it doesn't look dramatic. However, it is because we have severely depreciated. Nigerian currency has been depreciated significantly in the last 18 months. And in that last 18 months, that is why the difference between 2015 and today is just about 44%. However, in Naira terms, the difference between June 2015 and June 2024 is 1,000%. So our debt growth in almost a decade is 1,000%. That is not sustainable.
All right, definitely. We'll still unpack some more, about this debt. I've been talking to Dr. Ogo Okiti, the CEO of Think Business Africa. We'll take a quick break now. When we come back, we'll get a check on what to expect for the Nigerian economy. That's in a moment. Just stay with us. Welcome back. Well, as African countries are trying to avoid the kiss of debt, let's see how Nigeria can make that happen. We still have Dr. Ogo Okiti, the CEO of Think Business Africa. Thank you for staying on, Doctor. So, Doctor, now that subsidies gone and the FX market has been floated, do we see less pressure on rising debt? Will it rise at a slower pace?
That is not what I think is happening. I think there's still pressure on debt, despite what I consider the most dramatic transfer of resources from the private sector to the public sector following the removal of subsidies. So let me take you back a bit to the period before the government ended the first subsidies. There were three arguments that were made before that. Before the policy. I'm talking three arguments in terms of decades. We've been making three arguments that, if the government removes first subsidy, then we will have resources for education. If the government removes first subsidy, then we'll have resources for health. And of course, if the government removes first subsidy, we will have resources for infrastructure. That is not what we have seen in the last 18 months. So we have not seen that kind of expenditure in the last 18 months. So that's the first. The second then is that despite the removal of first subsidy and of course the liberalization of the exchange rate that has transferred significant resources into public policies, we have also not seen the slowdown in the growth of debt. So that's number two. So this was the removal of first subsidy before it was removed was adding to government debt. That was the argument. So when you remove the first subsidy, you are supposed to start to see a slowdown in government debt, but that is not what we are seeing.
All right, definitely, as this year is winding down, what are you seeing for 2025?
2025, I think the outlook for 2025, I think is going to continue for the current trajectory. But let me just make one important point. In 2024, there was no payment of any external debt in terms of euro. In terms of euro, I'm not talking of other kind of debt. But in terms of the euro, the euro bond, there was no payment in 2024. There are some payments that are due next year. So that is something to look out for. That's something to look out for. That will also have implications for, obviously, for sourcing dollars and of course for foreign exchange in relation to that. In relation to the economy, I think my expectation is that we will see some sort of stability because we have started to see that stability. I'm not saying that the condition has improved dramatically, but we are seeing some sort of stability. Let me tell you what I mean by that. One, I don't see inflation going higher than the current trajectory. So it's still very high, but it is now going to be above stable. That's number one. Number two, also, if you look at what has happened in the last 3-4 months, the exchange rate has also been above stable. Yes, there's a difference of actually 100 naira here, 150 here, 200 here. But compared to what we have seen in the period before then, it is relatively stable. So my expectation for 2025 is that we'll see some sort of stability, and hopefully that will give businesses some room for them to be able to plan slightly ahead. Unlike the fighting of fires that we have seen in the last 18 months.
Hopefully all the fires subdue. Thank you so much. It was great having your perspective. Dr. Ogo Okiti is the CEO of Think Business Africa, convener of the Africa Business Convention. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me this one.
And that's it from me right here on Business Morning. I hand things over now to the Sunrise Daily team. Bye-bye.